Firstly, I would like to say good morning to all, and it's nice to be back here at this wonderful place where we talk about a lot of positive stuff, negative stuff, which we're going to turn it into a lot of positive way of dealing with things. I'd like to say, what I mean, Midigar Godambanak. Hello friends, it's good to see you. My name is Greg Sims, everyone knows me as Uncle Greg. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge that we are on Dark land. I would like to acknowledge elders past and present. We don't own the land owns us. We come from Mother Earth, we are the land. And the land upon today belongs to the Paramarigal tribe of the Dalek Nation, the Earl people. Where I come from the Gadigal tribe of the Dalek, which is based in Sydney, and there I belong to the Whale people. Also belong to the Gundar and Gada Nation in the Blue Mountains, where I belong to the Water Dragon Lizard people, and on the south coast, the Buttawong tribe, the Beach Plover, belonging to the Yuin Nation, the Black Duck. I'm one of the Aboriginal elders of Western Sydney. Become the elder, you have to do lots and lots of work in your community before you get respect in return. And we as elders, we go out and teach how to break down barriers and build bridges. We're out there trying to turn people's lives around. And the thing is that when people do come to sacred country, they forget that our people are the First Nation people of the sacred land. And they think all Aboriginal people throughout the country speaks the same language. We have well over 500 dialects in this country. In New South Wales, we have well over 136. So this must have been a multicultural country before settlers came in 1788 and the ones that followed. By saying this, we are all Australians. And we as Aboriginal elders, we don't exclude people from the circle. We love people to come into the circle, share their values and stories. We will never have knowledge if we don't do this. Once we start learning from each other, then we're heading in the right direction towards reconciliation. And I remember my Auntie Susie always used to say, the music will always sound better if we use both the black and white keys. And I think it's a beautiful saying, and where we live today is one community, many cultures. So I'd like to thank you for having me here today, and it's wonderful to be here with a diverse of people from various parts of the world, and we do have in our cultures we have a lot of similarities how we live. And the thing is that I will continue working with this team because they're very they're positive what they talk about. And so I'm going to do the welcome. Just before I do, I'd just like to acknowledge the organisers that put all this together, and the film crew that's with us today. And I'd just like to say, before I give the welcome, I'd like to say that when we take our next step, just remember the ones that walked this sacred land before. Tiari Mara, Daraka Pemal, Kawi Maria Pemal Nagariki Babana, my name in the water now, no Tisi guy, down the Gamma the other line. The Gariki Tiari, the Gariki the Gami guy, good you win a Gunagal, Dagonagal. Tala Lowy Mukai Bala Nagami, the low and near Train the Gunagal. Jammy Tiari, the Gariki or the Jomana, maybe I got on what I needed at Daraka Pemal. Did we go? This is Dalek land, it's the land of our ancestors. The spirits that walk among us. Spirits that have been here since the dream time. Our language and our culture have been passed down from generation to generation to continue an unbroken culture that has extended for thousands of years. In the language of our people, we welcome you to Dalek land. Thank you and have a great morning. And just finishing off on that, have a great Christmas too.
Here we go.
There we go. That's my yay.
Thank you, Uncle Greg. With respect, I acknowledge you, the traditional owners, the Darug people and nations.
That's it, there's 35
And
tribes.
pay my respect, of course, yourself and Auntie Carol and all the elders on this land that we're meeting on here today and across the whole lands of this nation.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. Good morning, Aunt Carol, Uncle Greg. It's great to be in your presence. It's great to be back on the lands of the Parramatta Gal people, the people of the Eel and the Parramatta River. It's good to be amongst you all. I've been asked to provide emotional support during the filming of this project. Many of you know that I'm a social worker and counsellor in practice, and with that in mind, it's understandable that during the filming of today, strong emotions might surface during the conversations and stories that you share about your lived experience. So with that in mind, I've been asked to provide some time-limited emotional support today. The way that will work is that many of you have Teams, so if you send me a discreet message, I will make myself available to you throughout the day. Those who don't have Teams, my desk is at the back of the office, just approach me. We can go for a brief walk, we can meet in the small room next door. So at this point, I'd like to talk to you about the rules that have been established within this group, or generally the way the group has been asked to talk about their experiences. And that is things like allowing each and every one of you to talk in turn, listen with an open heart, an open mind, and respectfully. When sharing lived experiences, there's a very unique and precious stories that you'll share. It's a moment where your peers, your colleagues, your friends will be inviting you to a personal space to share some deeply profound experiences that they've had. It isn't a space for debate. It's a space for creating safety and the sharing of common themes, common journeys that you've had. And so with that in mind, please listen with an open heart, with respect, with kindness, and go gently and forward with that in mind. I find it really helpful to also talk about what happens when these strong emotions surface. And if you need to take a break, that's perfectly reasonable, okay? Just quietly excuse yourself from the group. You can come and speak to me, you can take some time, you can have some glass of water, you can go for a walk by yourself as well, if that's what you need. I'm also thinking about when you're speaking, when you're telling your stories, it's coming from a place that can be profoundly moving. So advice I'd like to give is to use your I feel statements. Okay, I felt in the moment that this happened. This was happening for me. This is how it manifested. This is how it affected my life moving forward. This is what it drove me to do. Also, the other statement I'd use is in my experience. In my experience, when I was confronted with this situation, this is how it felt for me. Listen without judgment. It's an obvious one. Okay. Sometimes in our drive to support our peers, we want to help. We want to go to that helping stage. Okay. I'm a firm believer that we all have an internal resource that enables us to find our own solution, and in just giving voice to those strong feelings, we find our own solutions. But also when we work in a group, new solutions, creative ways of thinking and doing can also surface as well. And that's okay as well. But also be invited into that space. So we might look across the table and say, is it okay for me to add to that? You know, be invited into somebody's journey and story and thoughts and feelings. And let's respect each other's individual experience. We may all have our common shared experience, but we may have a different way of looking at it and experiencing it. So with that in mind, I will be available to you outside. I won't join the group. Okay, it is a time-limited service that I'll be providing, so bear that in mind, because for some of you, I will return to be your peer and colleague. The forum has made EAP available to staff for longer-term support should those strong feelings continue to surface, and I can help you also by providing you a range of services for referrals beyond today as well. And I've prepared that resource, so I will provide it if we have a chance to talk. Again, thank you for inviting me into this space. It's an honour and a privilege, not only as a peer, as a citizen of Greater Western Sydney, but as a social worker to be providing you with this support today. Thank you. Can I invite Turkan to talk to you about what she'll be doing today and the services that she'll be providing?
No worries. Thank you, Martin. Merhaba, hoş bulduk. I am received with joy. That's what hoş bulduk means. And Uncle, when you do your welcome, I feel received with joy. You always navigate how we bring our respect into this space by that leadership. So thank you, Uncle. And it's always a privilege and honour to be in your presence, Auntie Carol. Thank you for your time. And it's so great that you can join us. And each and every one of you, not just today with our recording, but the journey we've been taking on for almost a year now. It's been a hectic, interesting, exhilarating, sometimes exhausting ride for all of us. But what we do is we do check-ins at each of these sessions, because we don't know what your morning's been like. We don't know the depths of your story. And before I like to start that, I want to also acknowledge your ancestors, your lineage. Some of us carry language, some of us carry that in the languages we speak, some of us carry that just in the presence by the way we look and how we cook and how we sing and how we dance. So there are various different ways in how we keep culture strong. I'm always just inspired to keep my culture strong to answer uncles who are in our space, because I came here as a migrant, and as a migrant I was not really encouraged to speak my Turkish, so to hear you speak language, honestly, it makes my heart really swell up, so thank you, Uncle. When we do check-ins, we all have our story, and to this time, to this point, to this presence, I just want to make sure that you are safe to navigate these conversations, to be asked these questions. Martin just explained that sometimes these stories and this sharing does evoke emotion, and that emotion varies. I know for me, when I sometimes hear stories that really resonate with me, I have a physical response. So my cheeks get really hot and red. You'll see it straight away. I can't hide that. My hands will start getting clammy and I start to tighten it. And the worst case scenario for me is that my throat starts to tighten up. So it makes it really hard for me to actually voice myself. And I know for me, it doesn't always mean that I'm being triggered. Sometimes it's my ancestors that get triggered and they hit me by the shoulder and say, speak up or say something. I struggle with the terms even saying this is how I'm feeling. Sometimes it's a case of there's someone who's activated me and I need to make sure I connect and listen and understand that. And that's a journey for me that I'm taking on. So if you are finding those emotions that are coming to surface for you, there are some things you can do. Some of you already might have some grounding techniques that you already utilize. I really encourage for you to do that, things that work for you. But some of you might not be aware of your emotions. You might not be aware that you are in spaces of being triggered by the stories and by experiences. And if you do find any of that is happening, some things you can do is take a breath in, a big breath in, and a big breath out. And as you all know, we do our regulating and grounding practices that we'll do at the end of today as well. So we'll do some of that as well. You can always have a glass of water. That helps the brain relax a bit more because it has to have a physical response. You can stand up and go for a walk. Martin is ready and able and has committed to this time period to be able to sit and stand and hold space with you. I also am aware that sometimes you don't want help straight away, and sometimes you might require that a bit later. And we have made a commitment, I have made a commitment to make sure that if you do need some additional support now, in 3 hours, in 3 weeks, feel free to connect. We're here to make sure that each and every one of us are safely navigating these spaces. So again, thank you for being part of this recording, but more so thank you for listening, actively listening to these incredible people who are here with us today. Thank you.
So we might continue now. I'll stay seated so I don't appear. So what do you have in common? What motivates you to participate in this group? And what do each of you contribute? So keep it conversational, keep it light if you'd like to. It's just to share some of that wonderful warmth that you've got between you anyway. And the energy is so beautiful. And if you change your mind, then just stop. I'm going to start again. Lose that. This is really what I'd like to say instead. That's fine. Easy for us. So just enjoy acquainting yourself again with your colleagues and keep your eye contact with them, not over here. It's great. Anything else? That's it. Okay, away you go. John, do you want to start?
What motivates me? I think this group right here. Look that way. Let me start again. I think all of you motivate me to continue the work. Just listening to your stories continue motivates me. I always get so inspired each time we do our working party meeting. I get re-energized. I get inspired. I just have the energy to continue doing the work. It's quite exhausting. Space to work, continually advocating and continue doing it. But whenever I'm here, it's just that shared sense that we're working towards that goal. And no, it's so inspiring. That's good. What's the share?
I know for me, what motivates me is particularly young leaders. They constantly motivate me. Having had to grow up in this country we identify as Australia, and as a migrant, I have been told many times not to use language. I have been white adjusting for long periods of time just to gain employment, to gain place. And what I've done in the process is stripped away way too much. The tax on that, the emotional, cultural tax on that, is not worth paying. And what I want to say back and see these young people who are coming before me is that I don't want you to be paying tax. I want you to celebrate who you are, and the contributions you make is next level incredible. And that's what I want to be paid in this direction, to make sure that people like our young leaders have the exact space they need to enhance and thrive in what they do best. I want to move things out of the way.
I think that's exactly what, as you were speaking, John, what inspires me and what drives me to be a part of this. It's hearing these opportunities that we're all creating for one another and supporting that and creating this space that we can, it's a safe space that we can share our stories. And we'll talk about what do we all have in common. I think what we all have in common is the various challenges we've all faced over the years. And it doesn't matter what background you're from, your age or anything, we've all had different challenges and we've had to persevere through that. And just hearing that perseverance, that resilience is what drives me. Having this safe space, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful group and it's a beautiful space. And hearing people like yourself, Turkine, and our WSCF elders, both Auntie Carol and Uncle Greg, and everyone's stories, providing that platform for us to have our voices heard, as you were saying. I think it's just beautiful.
I feel really blessed. Sorry. No, you can.
Please no.
Are you gonna lose? Are you gonna?
Yeah. Okay, she has spoken.
I feel really blessed to be welcomed into this space. I feel like I try to learn a lot about the experiences of the people in this room so that I can use it to be a better ally. I think like holding space for my colleagues and friends when they're tired is the goal, you know. So it's lucky that I get to share in this space with everyone.
Yeah, as we were growing up, there was 9 of us, 9 kids and mum and dad, and countless cousins in a 2-bedroom house that used to come and visit us. And stay longer than I thought they should. Mum and dad were very nice and they kept them. But going to school was hard for me. I mean, when you're black, they know you're black. You can't hide it. And so it's much easier for them to come up and hit you or say something as they walk past. That's something that when I talked to Mum about, she said, Carol, everybody's different. Everybody's got their own way. Don't you ever answer them back, and don't be like them. So, and that was from earlier primary school. But I've got lots of little things to prove that it wasn't easy, but then it wasn't hard either, because I've kept my dignity, I hope, and I'm going into the schools now to help other kids that have trouble going to school. And that to me it's helped me so much that I just feel really grateful for having my parents and an uncle who is everybody's uncle and the nicest man I know, has helped us just to realise that we're Aboriginal, we can't change that, so get on with it. And that is what I thank Uncle for. He's just been amazing to us and our family. But we're learning now to get into the schools and talk to all the kids. And I find if you take a little balloon and let some air out while people are sitting down, they all go like that. Oh, I hope it wasn't me. And all I could do was laugh, and they say, oh, Carol. But yes, this is what life's all about. It should be laughter and fun for kids. And that's our biggest thing on the mountains. We've got Jacinta Tobin, we've got Chris, we've got Leanne, we've got so many of our people up there doing the right thing and helping wherever we can. And so if anybody ever needs help in this group, and because of what you've done for my mum, because she was an ambassador too. Long before me, and she said, now you've got to take it on. I said, oh, no way, no. Mm-hmm. But after a while, she just dragged me and dragged me and dragged me, so, and I love it. It's great, and I thank you very much for what you are doing to help everybody else. It's amazing. And we really do appreciate it, so thank you very much. And to Uncle, love you so much.
Love you too,
Thank you.
So, Auntie, you're my motivation in being part of this group and listening to the stories that we're part of this amazing fabric where we all come from different walks of life. And to have your presence and sharing your very recent stories and a real reminder of the work to be done, and the fact that, you know, we all come from, some of us come from different migrant backgrounds, some of us here are migrants, and there are those shared experiences, but to then see that the work has to be underpinned by First Nations justice. And, you know, there's always that misconception that, oh, it's Asian history, but your presence in the room is constantly reminding us that there's so much work to be done, and in being I think we're at such a critical juncture. We're about to go into 2023, yet 2020 was this huge year where, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement really showed the power, like people power of, and that starts with people picking up their phones and filming the injustice that was started in America with George Floyd and what's had a ripple effect across the world. And I think it's really important to just not forget how much has changed in these last few years, reminding us that normal wasn't okay, that there is a need to address racial justice that needs to be part of our everyday work. So yeah, I think it's really great to just have this space, and it's a privilege to be part of it. And you know, for I really, really love what Bridget has to say about being an ally, because it is tiring when you have lived experience and you don't always want to be lenient. And there are days where I've come to this meeting where I'm tired, I'm not quite up for fighting racism, because it's affected my entire life, and so I don't really often want to think about it. And so for us to be part of this bigger team and look at what as a collective we can do, I think that's what's most motivating. Thank you.
Cinzia, who's sitting out in the corridor, I haven't seen Cinzia for around 10 years, and we used to work really closely together. And when I walked in, the first thing she said to me after, "Oh my God, you look amazing." No. No, the first thing Cinzia said to me was, "Wow, look at the people you're working with," or words to that effect, and look at the amazing talent that's around you, and what a great place that you are. So of course, thinking about that in the context of what's common around us, and really what binds us is a lot of what you've already said in terms of our experiences, mostly really different. There is this common thread, and one of the things that, and many of you have heard me say this, one of the things that I really enjoy is those corridor conversations that we have in those stories. And I know I get teased for story time with Billy, but they're really rich with information that really shapes what we do and describes why we're here and why we do what we do. And whilst I know I wasn't born in Australia, but I came here when I was 1, so I don't really have any other home, this country and where I grew up is all I know is home. And I've seen not just our team, but all the teams that I've worked with over the years, and growing up, it's just been for me, such an interesting journey, living through the 70s and then the 80s and then so on, all the decades that I'd like to forget. But there are some real experiences that you talked about, Tulkan, that I experienced as well, And I remember going through, oh my gosh, probably at least 10 years of my life, that's a long time, as a young person while I was growing, being really ashamed to be who I am and to have my name. So that's extraordinary, and at the time you don't really think about it. It's not until you get older and you reflect back on that and you think, oh my God, the people around me and the world around me made me ashamed that my name was Biljana Sankovic. Oh my God, wow, that's pretty powerful, right? And of course my name's Billy, and I've been Billy for a long time, but that wasn't my choice. That was the teachers in 1973 or whenever it was that I went to school that couldn't say Biljana, right? So that stayed with me, and now I actually adopted and identified it. So it's interesting, isn't it, how what's you end up adopting without really knowing or understanding what that is and how that happened, and then you sort of give away your and I think it's funny, I'm 54 on Monday. Okay, I know, birthday time. But it's only been about 3 years that I've been saying to people, my name's Biljana, But I can't give up Billy. I do love Billy. Anyway, so I think for me, as part of my journey, there's some of the things that growing up in the 70s in this country, I personally experienced, but I also witnessed my parents experiencing some really tough things as well. I loved my street because everyone in my street was sort of diverse. We all played on the street. Everyone looked different. Everyone spoke different languages. You could smell different foods in my street. That was beautiful. But once we left our street and went to school, it was a different story. But I think one of the things for me when I reflect on, say, the last however many decades, in the 70s and 80s, it was this direct stuff. Like people would say, your name sounds stupid. But in the last couple of decades, people are, may not necessarily say that, and there's this implication in the conversations around different things, and the usual thing. Oh, where are you from? And I say, oh yeah, I grew up in Cabramatta. And then they go, but no, where are you really from? I'm from Cabramatta.
What do you mean by that?
So it's quite a different time, but I think what's really consistent is that, we as a country, I think, we cannot forget that the White Australia policy is current. It's not history. It shapes who we are, how we think, what we do to this day, today, when we walk out on that street. And we, that link between personal and political is huge, and we have to, in my mind, we have to always remember that. We can't say, oh, the stolen generation was, years ago. What I say to my kids as they were growing up, if I was Aboriginal, I had a high chance of being taken away from my family because of the colour of my skin and because of where I lived and because of who my family was. So you've got to understand that we're not talking about what happened in the past, we're talking about today and how it impacts you and me and this country today. Ben, that's it from me.
It's your birthday on Monday.
Monday's my birthday.
Mine too. We share birthdays
Don't leave the rest of us.
But I'm younger than you.
You so are younger than me.
I'd just like to say that that if Captain Cook and Governor Phillip would have went to Darwin, up there would have been fair-skinned Aboriginals. And if they'd have left us alone down there, the Darug people, there would have been full blood. And the thing is, with because on the other side of European Aboriginal people, like when you look at the Darug people, 35 tribes, 85%'s got Irish blood. And I'd just like to say that the European, the Aboriginal people today living in urban places that they had the other side of the family. We've got white connections. So the others, because I got Afro-American in me, or African blood, put it that way. Great-grandfather living out here since 1818. But the thing was, the other great-grandfather that came out here, he was Scottish. And so I belong to the McGregor clan. And the thing is that if it wasn't no Europeans connected up with Aboriginal people, we wouldn't believe in Easter or Christmas. And the thing is that that Aboriginal people, we like when you looking at us here today, there wouldn't be any stories in the Bible if the people didn't go around to all our countries and got stories. Because most of the stories in the Bible come from our people, going way back, over 1,000 years. And that's where all the stories come from, is our mob. And the thing is that, I blame today, what's going wrong in this country and in the world, is God. He's got to take the blame for what he's done wrong. Because when he built that garden, the Garden of Eden, he built a big wall around it to keep us Aboriginal people out. Because if we would have got in there, we'd have eaten the snake before it tempted Eve.
for so many reasons, and why I came here is probably different to why I'm here today and what keeps me here. So I obviously came here to dismantle racism, because that systemic approach and looking at equity, I think what binds me or what we have in common to each other is that passion for equity, for, you know, for us, and as Tora Khan and Auntie Carol mentioned, for children, for the next generations. It's, you know, we want that for everybody. So that's what brought me here, but it's been such a journey, and what keeps me here is that it's just that personal and political. So the individual change and the individual impact of hearing the stories of everybody. It's interesting how these kind of inequities work and how they work at this individual level as well. I was born in Australia, so I'm a second generation migrant. I grew up in Fairfield LGA in the 80s. It was so diverse, like, you know, the streets that Billy described basically. My brother was a child in the 70s, grew up being bashed at school because he was Aboriginal. You know, like, it's all connected. We're all connected somehow, and I don't know, but I grew up in a really multicultural environment. But now that I'm older, I see that, yes, there's a lot more acceptance, there's this, but have we really changed anything within power structures? So do people of colour have a voice at decision-making tables? Are we really able to influence and impact society in that way? I don't know. But I'm here for the ride. It's been amazing. Yeah, I'm here for the ride because the change is happening within me as well. So it's really interesting in how me tends to forget all the... I love stories, I love it, but I always think systemically and I forget that individual part. But this place, this group is reminding me the individual stuff, and Auntie and Uncle, your guidance through all of this is what keeps me alive.
I definitely resonate with the systemic work. Yeah. And I oftentimes try to like, Catherine, and even Anita, I was like, Catherine, slow it down, be gentle. Let's do things with caution and with ease, because this is a marathon and a race. But I'm always thinking about the systemic part, with the understanding that racism is a system in which we live in and operate in. And I guess my motivation is the social justice piece. We are all very much in whatever we have studied or whatever course life has taken us, it seems that social justice and the humanity of people is at the core of what we do. So that's definitely a driving force. And just simply put, there's no way that we can continue to live in the ways that we do. It's not feasible for me. It doesn't make sense. So if we have the opportunity to influence the systems, which then will impact the individual, then why not? And I also think of it in the context that me originally being born in Zimbabwe, just because I come from a continent of all black people, doesn't mean that racism doesn't exist. We often sometimes think of racism as a black and white issue, but it's a system that people operate in. It's about power, it's about privilege, it's those dynamics. So it just so happens that right now in my life, I'm in Western Sydney in Australia, having this conversation about racism. But we have this opportunity almost, because Western Sydney is so diverse, because we have so many intersectional issues, that if we can get it right, we'll be the blueprint for everyone else. You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely the systemic piece, the social justice piece, and simply we cannot continue to live like this. We cannot be in spaces where our personal is compromised. One other thing that I would like to add as well is having groups like the anti-racism group and it being endorsed by the board with the support of like CEOs and directors and things like that. We are bringing the personal into the professional. We can't negate and we can't forget that places of work and places of employment are still places for people to exist and to thrive. So it's really exciting for me to be part of this group because we are setting the blueprint of what it looks like when we care about people and when we look at people as complete individuals and looking at people as complete beings. And influencing the work that we do with the people that we do it with. So yeah, thanks for listening to our
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, it's really good. And the way that I came to this group in a very funny time. I think after being passed away, and how almost half the world forgot that what the colonizers did and were praying for the great work she had done for her country, which is amazing. But obviously, operation was clear in the mainstream media that, okay, now since that happened, just be quiet and forget about your grandfather and father in your life. While not far away from here, in the same week, my nephew gets passed away in the Westfield for being Indian. So it's a journey. It's not happened 100 years ago. And I know a lot of Indian immigrants being scared to name their children with Indian names because we don't know if they will get a job. Because the first thing when you apply for a job is this doesn't sound English. Do they speak English? Do they need interpreters? You know the story. We went to get a medical test and my wife was wearing Indian dress. She was standing beside me and the receptionist, does she need a translator? This happens every day here. This is not the past story we're talking about. This happens every day. And I think groups like this can create a collective voice, and obviously doing it as an organization can obviously give the blueprint to many other organizations that this is not an impossible task to actually raise a voice and talk about it. This is a doable thing. This is not alien, idealistic world. This is something that we can change. Don't ignore the power of collective voice. I think this is very important to be talking very collectively.
But you know what you're just saying about changing the names? Like, we have a lot of Aboriginal women, they change their names when they get married, you know, they could be married to a Muslim, could be married to anyone from the other side of the world. And then there might be a big, like the election time comes, just Aboriginal people only. And then this woman comes up and says, did you vote for me in the election? I said, I didn't see your name there. She said, my name is Kathy Wong. I said, I didn't know that. I said, you must put your grandmother's name and your married name. So when they see grandmother's name, then they know who you are. But she said, my name's Kathy Wong. I said, I didn't know that. And that's how people miss out on these votes, because people don't know who they are. That's why I keep drumming into my great-grandkids' heads, great-grandnieces' heads, that always take your grandmother's name, which is my sister's, my sister-in-law's family, and because my great-nieces, their last name is Draskovic, and their grandfather comes from Slovenia, And I said, if you make sure you put your two names in there, so people, when the time comes, and you might be in some position to be voted in somewhere, well, they know who you are. But if you just put down the Rasovich, which is Yugoslav, back in the day, and so they don't know who you are. So I'm rumbling there to put the two names in place. Like what you was talking about,
I feel
the culture.
like that's done in coming from South America and Uruguay. The norm is to have both names. You have it's an inclusive space for all backgrounds, and here it's very much, unfortunately, you've got to fit in the box, where it doesn't suit everyone's needs. So, I wish I had my mum's name as well, but coming to Australia when I was a baby, it was chosen to be dropped. So I could fit in, and so I just had two names. And I think that's something that we, as you were saying, Sharon, the names, it's something that I think groups like these, we're allowing these spaces to be able to have these conversations and reflect on our norms, our cultural norms, and how we can probably adopt different things as well. There's no rule saying that we need to drop our mum's name or our grandmother's name or anything like that. We incorporate everything.
I think it's very systemic. When I was thinking of that, because when I think of my name, it's Chi, Hugh, John. That's my whole first name, Lee. And then when I try to add that into the system, it's so confusing for everyone else to understand. What is your first name? Chi? Is it Hugh? Or maybe John? You know, it's simply you can't even allow for these names to be kind of your name. You know, so it just made me reflect in terms of how systemic it is and the process of just having a name. You know, because your name is your identity too. You know, you resonate with your name the most.
When we talk about systemic structures and those who support structures, you mentioned allyships. When this conversation initially started, allies recognised that they needed to let go of power. And Andy and the board members did that. They didn't try to reframe it, re-narrate it. They were like, righto, I'm going to step into that story with you, and I'm going to give you that space because I've got nothing to contribute to this. So I'm going to make sure my power is used by handing over that power. That's what I can do as an ally, as a co-conspirator. You know, these kind of words are, it's words, but when it becomes action, that's what meaning creates. Like this is a response of somebody going, I'm going to let go of power. When we talk about dismantling systems that only enrich those in privilege, that's what it looks like letting go with privilege. And that's how we're going to go along this journey, not over 12 months to 10 years. Aunt was experiencing when she was in school, then I started experiencing it, and I'm sure others have experienced it. This is an intergenerational investment. You know, you don't want to see this anymore. Well, let's invest, and this is what it starts with. It starts with these stories, and saying, I'm going to step into those stories with each other, with each other, one of us. To say, I'm going to hear you, I'm going to hear you, I'm going to hear you, and how is that going to impact me and how I step forward? I think that's such a powerful space to sit in. And I'm going to be honest with you, when I posed, hey, let's talk about anti-racism, I was expecting some walls to go up because that's what I'm used to. And for someone to go, righto, we're doing that. I'm like, hold on. That was nuts. But I now recognise that even board members themselves, they're going through their own journey of awareness and going, damn, am I holding on to and supporting structure, or am I going to let go of the structure because only change will happen if we share privilege, if we share assets, if we share resources, and we all co-benefit from this existence. And aunts and uncles are always great to remind us that it's not even us, that does the earth, does that river, does that tree also co-benefit from this journey. When we look about intergenerational investment, is it just us? Or is it our grandparents? Or is it the country that we're on? this thing goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And I love what's common about us is that we're all ready to go deep. If you're not ready to go deep right now, go home, because we need to make sure we're focused on action right now. There's no more room for, I'm just going to express myself anymore. It's not about that. It's not about holding on to each other unless we're going deep now.
And that's what's so powerful is that I agree this whole thing about wanting. I also thought this level of impatience of right. So what are we doing here? What are all the things we're going to do this year? But to recognise that this is to go to that level of depth will take time. To let it take its course and not rush into a particular solution, but to actually think about the systems, because that's we're talking about how many hundreds of years in the making. And to challenge the notion that racism is not just about feelings. If someone, I've been told go back to Muslim at Bondi Beach and just laugh it off, you know, look at the guy and say, right, bad day, he's got his own issues. That may hurt some people's feelings, but it's actually the systems that hurt people's lives, that reduces how long they live, affects their employment prospects, it actually kills them. You know, we look at Aboriginal people killed by racism because of so many factors. Prior to working here, I was so confronted with what I saw in terms of just the systemic level of racism that comes with child removals and how that has a flow-on impact onto the justice system. And then that is why Aboriginals are in custody, because they are overrepresented there because of systemic issues. And if we look at what's happened the last couple of years, where during the COVID period, Western Sydney was targeted, and we were targeted and have been the target of our law enforcement, and that just shows you that it's systemic issues, and that's going to take a lot of work, and it will require working with everyone and coming to a point where we actually acknowledge that it's not just about saying. People have a hard time talking about racism, I think. It does bring out a lot of discomfort, and there's this general resistance towards talking about it because of the fact that so much of it brings out that level of, I guess you call it white fragility and defensiveness, but to actually go deep and look at the system issues, that's where the change happens.
And also, like someone says, oh, there's no racism now. Where do you see racism? You don't see racism in the papers. That's not a published paper. Racism is what you experience when you apply for a job, or when you're at a supermarket counter, or like when you want to buy a house. Everybody goes, oh, don't buy in Mount Road. You know what? Like, this is real. You hear these things on daily basis, and yet people say, oh, there's no racism in Australia. We have too many cultures in Western Sydney. There's no racism.
Sometimes I wish we were in the 70s where people said it as it is, because now there's so many layers of meaning. So I went to a house inspection one time at the Inner West, and I was having a chat with a lady, and I suggested just go a couple of suburbs down, which is the official southwest border, and she made a comment of, oh, those units smell, and all I could think about, she's talking about, you know, the culture of the people that live there, and the fact that it isn't so sanitised and isn't, you know, crosses the latte line, and so there are so many insidious things that you hear. Also just Western Sydney, like for me personally speaking, growing up in this beautiful, rich, multicultural part of the world and loving it. However, at the same time, I grew up at a time in the 90s where where I lived was seen as this ghetto, and you know you risk being, it's not for the brave-hearted. That's the way it's presented. And then going out in the world and progressing to uni and then going out in the workforce and then standing out and being told, oh, you're from the West, so you are immediately seen as this outsider. Just yesterday I was booking a dentist appointment, and the person on the phone was clearly from the city, and because it's some of the year where it's so hard to find an appointment, so I said, okay, wherever's available, I said, okay, I'll go to Penrith. And he said, oh, the weekend I went to Parramatta and I had to wonder where I was and how long is it taking me. And so we look at Sydney, and Sydney is very divided. We have this divide between the West and the rest parts of Sydney, and multiculturalism is just seen as this tokenistic aspect of let's enjoy your kebab, but let's not go into the deeper issues about why your Uber driver has a medical degree or engineering degree. That's the bigger issues that we need to be looking at now.
I feel like the system is working the way it's supposed to be, though,
Sure.
in the fact that racism isn't so slappy in the face. Because it's so much harder to dismantle a system that people with privilege cannot see. Like, it takes, unfortunately, it takes work to see that people don't have the privilege. I mean, I think everyone wants to assume that everyone has, well, not everyone. Ideally, everyone would want to assume that everyone has the same access to things, but it's not true. And, you know, when you have councils refusing to put up signs, racism not welcome here, it's because no one's getting bashed by police officers commonly, you know, and it's a lot easier to keep that system going, which is doing exactly what it's meant to be doing. You know, it's not just enough to be non-racist. You have to be actively anti-racist.
Absolutely. And I take that responsibility as a child of migrants, knowing that I'm a beneficiary. Every time I go back to my home country, I'm reminded of, oh wow, I'm so lucky, I'm so privileged. Yet knowing that the work that needs to be done to heal the wounds of the past, the fact that I didn't meet anyone who was Aboriginal till I was in primary school, the fact that I heard slurs growing up, and that unfortunately migrants selling into this country absorb the systemic racism to be able to, in their mind, succeed and survive. And then that leads to this perpetual cycle of not coming to terms to, you know, what other issues that we actually need to address. The fact that people don't know about the history of this country. So yeah, I think West Sydney can be this roadmap because we are such a rich melting pot of all parts of the world and our First Nations.
I love that, yes, it can be a roadmap, but at the same time, we're so open about the vulnerabilities of not understanding yet. I love that. So we're okay about making mistakes, we're okay about not knowing and saying we don't know yet, that we're going to learn, we're going to understand. One thing I struggle with is utilising English to navigate this space. English itself for me is a really hard concept. How do I navigate my conversation and exposure while I'm using the King's language? So how do we make sure that we bring our own cultural identities, whatever form that looks and feels like, into these spaces to make sure that we are bringing our identity, our full names, the way we agree, the fact that we acknowledge grandparents when we let people know who we are. I think there's such a power in activating those identities, the ones we have let go of. I mean, some of us have let go of that for many, many decades. And I find that Uncle and Aunt, you both, I look upon that leadership to say, you know, you just mentioned, how do I know this person? How am I going to identify you? I can't see that. It reminds me, yes, that's how we connect. We make sure that you know who my grandma is and which village she's from and which part of the region of the country she's at, because it helps you connect with my ancestors. And there's a pride in that my ancestors are connecting with your ancestors and that respect is given to you. And I think that if we are going to go down this national framework that the country is currently going on with the Human Rights Commission, who are basically in the process of a national anti-racism framework, how do we do that while the structures are not letting go yet? How do we do that in a safe, both culturally and psychologically safe manner? So I think that's something that obviously we're going to keep learning as we go down that path. We're going to keep going, hey, we might need to slow down here, or let's speed it up here. And that's what, you know, I really value about each and every one of you. When you add those contributions in, it just gives that richness of flavour, richness of motivation. It really makes my batteries go, you know, to full and overload sometimes, because, you know, our batteries can be pretty flat, like even just entering into these spaces and discussions. But yeah, going up, and I'm happy to take next week on, next year on, next decade on. Like, I think that's something that's pretty unique in the way we navigate through this space.